Yes. I was asked to come speak here. I spoke earlier this year at the Hypoxia Task Force meeting in DC, and thought that this would be a good opportunity to reach the research audience, science audience around this particular topic, about what we're doing with Field to Market, where we are with water quality, where we're headed, and why, some of the challenges that are coming up that I think are really relevant to the work that you all are doing. I came to Field to Market just 3 years ago. I'll explain a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, why we exist, and all of that, and then talk about the water quality piece. But my own background is really in crop modeling, agroclimatology type of research, soil carbon dynamics, things like that. So I'm much more familiar with the models than I am with the on-the-ground measurements, and a lot of the work that you all are doing out in the field. So I'll just say that up front, that I'm really hoping to learn from all your expertise as we go over the next couple of days. So Field to Market, just as our mission statement up front, we are a nonprofit organization, a multi-stakeholder alliance, working on sustainable agriculture, focusing on defining, measuring, and advancing sustainability of food, fiber, and fuel production, and we should add feed to that. And we're working with particularly the dairy industry on dairy feed. Oops, sorry, a little button happy. Who is Field to Market? So Field to Market is a membership-based organization. We have over 130 members now. Members are organizations that fall into some sector that has relevance in the commodity crop supply chain in the U.S. And so our focus has been on that particular chain. We're working with 5 specific sectors that form our governance process. So each sector has representation on all of our governance committees and board and so on and so forth. The sectors that we have, just to list them out, are food companies, right? So the downstream food companies that produce food that you see on the grocery store shelves, the agribusinesses who supply inputs to farmers as well as purchase the product directly from the farmers, the grower organizations. So one thing with Field to Market is we had from the very beginning, 11 years ago, the farmer organizations at the table in the room talking about what sustainability meant to them and their members and what they wanted to do about it. And we have a number of NGO partners, and then we have what we call our affiliate sector, which is universities and government. So we have a strong partnership with NRCS, and we also have a number of land-grant but other universities involved as well, including at NC State. So lovely to be here at NC State. But a number of partners all working together on this program towards sustainable crop production. And the reason that Field to Market exists in this space was that many of these food companies and other companies are making broad, ambitious goals around being more sustainable in their sourcing of different commodities. You may have seen some of these in the news. You know, Unilever has a goal to sustainably source 100% of 10 major commodities that they use in their products. What does that mean? You know, so they would develop their own program, and each food company would be going out to all their suppliers and all their farmers to say, okay, I need everybody to fill out this questionnaire. So farmers might get a dozen of these questionnaires from these food companies who are not farmers, and it was just not an ecosystem of information that was going to be useful to anyone or actually promote changes in more sustainable practices on the ground. So this was, how can we do better? How can we design a pre-competitive platform that works for the farmers, that actually does achieve results on the ground, and that also allows the food companies transparency into what's happening in their supply chain and ability to say something about efforts that they're taking to improve on that performance. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of diverse viewpoints around the table when these groups get together, so some guiding principles I think are useful. And obviously engaging the full supply chain, getting everyone around the table. Our definition of sustainability is continuous improvement. So we're not creating a line for people to jump across. We're creating a program whereby the measure is how you do over time. Are you able to improve your performance along our measures over time? That being the key to sustainability. Our initial focus obviously on commodity crops. The transparency and grounded in science is really where my position comes in as the science and research director, to make sure that our metrics and our program are the best that we can do with the available information and the state of knowledge at this time, and to try and keep up with what's going on in the scientific community and make sure that our program is robust and that it is transparent as well to all who are interested in knowing why or how we're measuring things that we're measuring. Remaining technology neutral means that we're not making any specific recommendations. We're not out there saying everybody must adopt cover crops in order to qualify for the program. We're not doing things like that. You should or should not be using specific products. It's all, the farmers should be able to make whatever decisions they need to make for their goals, and we are providing them with another set of information around their sustainability and their environmental impact to help inform them as they make those decisions. And then focus on environmental outcomes, which is interesting for our metrics. So a metric can mean many things. I'm sure you've all seen that happen in different places, different definitions of what a metric is. For us, those metrics are designed to be measures of environmental outcomes, right? So a metric can be just a number. What is the amount of nitrogen you added to your field? You'll see sustainability groups use nitrogen rates as a metric. Our metric is instead, what is the water quality impact and what is the nitrous oxide or greenhouse gas emissions? So that really, what is the environmental outcome of concern that we all agree is important that we're trying to measure? And that in itself is the metric. That's harder to do, right? You're all scientists, you all know that. It is harder to model greenhouse gas emissions from a field than just to ask someone how much nitrogen they added. So it does create a challenge in the metric space. So our metrics are key, obviously part of our supply chain sustainability programs. This is what the group has developed over the past 11 years with 3 key components. So benchmarking performance, so that's really a key part of where the metrics are used. So an individual farmer will enter data for an individual field and see their scores on these outcomes and comparisons to some national and state benchmarks, as well as they can compare those to their fields, other fields, and fields over time, and so on and so forth. So that's benchmarking. Where are you, and then how can you improve from that? And the Catalyzing Continuous Improvement is a program developed around how we can provide guidance back to farmers on, okay, you've got these scores, what do you do with them? Like, how do you actually make the needle move on any of these? What are things that you can do that are appropriate to your system that might be valuable in this space? So we have a whole program around educational resources. We also have this being used in the context not of just individuals. It's typically done by what we call supply chain projects. So we have partnerships coming together where food companies, potentially interested in sourcing a particular commodity or understanding their sourcing of a commodity, working through their supply chain to engage a group of farmers in a region. So they know they're sourcing wheat from Michigan. I'll show an example. And so they go back through and they find, okay, they've got a number of these wheat farmers who are interested and willing to participate in the program. They're going to all enter their data. That will be in aggregate then reported into the food company, so they'll have transparency into what's happening, but not at the level that makes it a worry for farmers to think that somebody's nitpicking. Somebody who doesn't understand agriculture is nitpicking what they're doing on their field, trying to keep it anonymous at that level. But they're working together in the context of a project, and then that project sponsors will have goals. They will want to focus on water quality or soil health or greenhouse gas emissions, whatever it is they want to focus on, and they can design technical assistance. They're required to have meetings with the farmers to show them their information, to show them their neighbors' information so they can all see how they perform relative to the population they're in, and then provide some technical assistance and guidance around the topic that they're interested in improving on to try and help incentivize a change in practices on the ground, so actually catalyzing continuous improvement. And then finally, enabling sustainability claims. So the food company at the top that started this project and sponsored it could then make some sort of public statement. We're not, on the grocery store shelves, you're not going to see our little shopping cart, but this is really for their corporate sustainability report. When they have set these ambitious sustainability targets, they can say that we have done this in response to this target, and this is how far along we are, and this has been verified by a third party. So we have a whole system in place for how to verify information going into the program. Really, the metrics have to be able to be used in all of these contexts, right? They have to be robust measures then of the environmental outcome. They have to be something that you can use in the context of providing feedback and educational resources to farmers, having levers in the metrics that they can actually impact, right? It does no good to have a metric that they can't influence in any way because it's not something they'll ever be able to see improvement based on their decisions. So we try and have a way for our metrics to actually respond to changes that a farmer may be making in an accurate way. And then they also need to be meaningful at the downstream end to the companies at downstream end who want to make a claim, it needs to be something that's important to them. I won't go through this in much detail, but our existing metrics are these 8. Really, obviously, the one of interest to this group is going to be on water quality, but we also have an irrigation water use component on irrigation efficiency and several others on soils. This is where we currently have field print projects, so 45 of these collaborations out in the field. Some of them are from the food company initiating them for a supply region. We also have a number of projects initiated by grower organizations and by universities who use this as an educational tool for the growers that they work with. So they come at it from different ways, and then the independent verification of sustainability claims. Companies can talk about their participation. They can talk about their measurement, which is, we're working with so many farmers in a certain region or so many acres that we've touched and so on. And then actually impact claims of we have seen an improvement in some metric over time in the region that we're sourcing from. So one example of just how this works, because it's always a little easier to think about it with real information, but our Collaboration of the Year award this past year went to Kellogg's Origins Great Lakes Field Print Project, where Kellogg's is partnering with Syngenta and Agribusiness and the Nature Conservancy as their supplier of the technical assistance and the independent expertise on the ground. So they're using Field to Market program specifically for one of their product lines, their Origin cereals product line, for sourcing of wheat. And they've been focused on providing technical assistance and I think broadly around nutrient management and water quality and soil health as well. Those are all 3 common ones that come up frequently. They hold an annual grower workshop to share the results and have an opportunity to connect growers with the resources that they can use, and obviously a lot of partnerships involved in this. I also put in here just a quote. I put this in mostly for the Hypoxia Task Force, but I think it's what we hear all the time when you go out and talk to farmers. What is sustainability? Well, my kids, I want my kids to farm. I want them to be able to farm this land. I want that to be an option to them. So trying to keep that in mind is what is their goal? What does their sustainability mean to them? Is keeping the operation going. So what are we doing on water quality? So I mentioned, showed the list of 8 metrics and just went by that briefly. Water quality right now in our program is measured by the Water Quality Index, which is an NRCS tool I'm sure you all are familiar with. It's just an operational index of the risk that a farm is losing nutrients, sediment, pesticides. It hasn't been the most popular metric within the program. I think it was before I came on board 5 years ago or so. I think there was a lot of discussion that a water quality metric was absolutely required. You can't talk about sustainability of commodity crops in the U.S. without having some way to bring water quality into that discussion. So bringing WQI in allowed that to be a metric on the wheel and to be a starting point for conversations about water quality and to get that in the minds of growers in front of them. What can they do about their water quality? We also do have the quantitative measure of water erosion right now from Russell 2 going on to WEP. And so what we've been trying to do is develop a more robust metric. We work a lot with NRCS and we followed on with what they're doing, and there's still a lot happening in that space that we're staying in touch with. I'll get there in just a minute. What we've been doing with some support from foundations is to work on developing a quantitative approach to use one of the existing water quality models out there to develop a way to do field-level measurements of water quality for use in this context. So we've done an initial proof of concept. We're doing a pilot project this year. So some of the challenges we've come up with, so we're going from this index model that's already developed by NRCS and then trying to do actual field-level modeling of water quality, right? Our unit is a field, so a farmer you need to be able to talk to a farmer about what is the water quality impact of their practices. And the challenge that we came across in looking at all the water quality models out there is that, of course, we're trying to look at watersheds. Your goal on water quality is often what is the in-stream, what is the water quality in the stream at a certain point. So it makes sense that the models and the research are designed to look at that question specifically, but we're finding a real lack of information in models that work at that field scale to actually help tell an individual grower, this is the nitrate impact of your practices. And I have discovered, I think, that farmers are much more particular about that being accurate and knowing the accuracy of that than a researcher. Researchers, you're much more comfortable with uncertainty and knowing that there's a range and that we know, with the confidence interval of these numbers that we're getting. When you're a farmer, you're asking them to make an economic decision based on the number you're giving. So you have to be able to give a robust answer and know very particularly how accurate it is or is not. So that is a challenge as well. So the spatial scale, how to communicate the impact. You can see sediment loss, but still you can't see the nitrates. If you go out and talk to a farmer and they want to, tell them about they need to do something about their water quality, you better be able to show them something, right? Because they might think that they're following all recommendations, so the problem is not their problem. And we don't actually know necessarily if it is their problem either, and trying to get them to do more is challenging in those circumstances. There are a lot of field level measurement and do tests, a day here or there on the tile drainage are helpful, but necessarily useful in the context of extending those to modeling for a metric that will change over time, an annual level metric. And then cost, how to incentivize the change. How can we get the right value flow going around water quality? So the barriers that we've seen, we're trying to get data together for a pilot project that we're doing in Indiana, and found very difficult to access actual data. There are some studies out there measuring water quality at the edge of field, absolutely. There's work going on, a lot more has come in recently. It's been really challenging to get a hold of that data. Researchers want to hold on to the information they have until they're able to publish. I totally understand that. I think that creates a huge lag though, because we have to instrument fields, take the measurements, publish the research. The research then has to go into the modeling community, who has to calibrate the models, do their modeling, and all of that has to happen. It takes many years. There are models of how that can happen faster if done in a coordinated and integrated way, but I haven't seen that effort yet in the water quality space, but I think there's opportunity for doing that. So I think the challenge that we're having with finding that data means that the approach of doing this quantitative field level information scale that we want to do is not a near-term prospect. It's really a longer-term prospect for us. I mentioned really briefly or showed it that we did a report on comparing models for this particular purpose. I'm happy to share it with others if they're interested, but there, again, lots of models in this space. None of which really score high on everything that we're looking for, right? But models, only good as the data that you models for what we're aiming to do. I know I'm out of time, so I'm just trying to see if there's other issues that I wanted to mention before I get the actual literal hook. Yeah. So the last final things I want to mention. So we're working on a pilot project to test out, does a quantitative approach work, right? If we actually did it for a small group of farmers, what is their response? Can they use this information if we actually are able to tell them with some known level of confidence the nitrate and phosphorus loss of their fields? Is that actually helpful? Can we do it well enough to be useful? If we can, I think there's a huge opportunity there, but also a lot of resources required to take that to scale. In the meantime, the two things that we can look at are the new NRCS tool that they've been developing for the RSET program around water quality we're looking at, but also looking at edge of field practices very particularly. As I mentioned, the field print project earlier, the relevance of that is that we are working with groups in geographic localities, and there is potential there, I think, to add in something to our program to be incentivizing these projects to help install these edge of field practices in appropriate places. So that's something we've been talking about as well as something to add into the program outside the metrics, but in conjunction with a lot of our goals around water quality. So open to all sorts of suggestions or ideas from you all. I'd love to talk with you all more about some of the data collection and so on, and what we're up to. So thank you.